like going into the building house, like there are going to be mistakes that I make. There are going to be things that I don't get right. There are going to be decisions that I regret, and just like letting yourself off the hook a little bit. And then I guess the goal is to make those things around the things that perhaps are secondary, to really focus on getting the most important things right. So I think then part of the learning is just surrounding yourself in the kind of environment and with the kind of people that that you feel aligned with. And so that meant a deliberate decision not to be in some home building Facebook groups or not to look at some magazines or websites, but rather to say, no, these are the ones that reflect my values. This is where I'm going to hang out.
What's obviously jumping out at me is just how knowledgeable you've become about all of these things. You know, the level of understanding that you have is so fantastic in terms of understanding how things work, how that works together with the work that you've done with your team. I'd love to sort of, and I can imagine somebody who's at the beginning of their journey, who's just dipping their toe in the water, is going, oh my gosh, this just sounds so beyond my league. Like, how on earth am I going to gather all of this kind of knowledge together? This sounds it all sounds like a lot. And then it's that whole thing of like, we can't unknow what we know. And so people get resistant to, well, I'm just not going to find it out, because if I don't know, then it's not something I have to feel guilty about not doing, in terms of how I embark on it. So can you talk through that process of becoming knowledgeable and how you tackled, perhaps feeling out of your comfort zone, knowing what you wanted to achieve, but you didn't, because you're obviously at this end of it of 3 years, and it's not been all at once that you've gained this knowledge. So, can you just talk through that process? Because you're not in the industry. So, how has this been for you in terms of what you've done and how you've approached it? And I suppose your appetite for it all in terms of how it's worked for you.
Yeah. That's a great question and kind of hard to answer from the inside, right? So I guess like the first thing that I would say is that it's been longer than 3 years. And I'm sure this is true for a lot of the people that you work with. That this is 5-10 years of not actively working on a project, but of subscribing to Sanctuary Magazine or being a member of the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook group, which is a fantastic source of advice. It's going to a sustainable house day or watching a video online, and so all of this stuff kind of permeates a little bit. It's not that I'm studying this thing, but it kind of just gets you thinking and asking questions. And then and then I guess getting into it, like the amount of information is overwhelming, and often I would feel a level of guilt, like I haven't been through all of the modules in the home method. I haven't listened to every single podcast, and feeling like there might be some crucial information in one of them that I've missed, and what am I going to do? But a lot of it is like, and I guess I had to learn this and remind myself of it, is a bit of self-compassion through the process as well, that you're not an expert. I was seeing a therapist for some other things, and I remember kind of embarking on a change, and she said to me, like, you're gonna F this up, like, and that was like, oh, like she's just like, get over it. And so like going into the building house, like there are going to be mistakes that I make. There are going to be things that I don't get right. There are going to be decisions that I regret, and just like letting yourself off the hook a little bit. And then I guess the goal is to make those things around the things that perhaps are secondary, to really focus on getting the most important things right. So I think then part of the learning is just surrounding yourself in the kind of environment and with the kind of people that you feel aligned with. And so that meant a deliberate decision not to be in some home building Facebook groups or not to look at some magazines or websites, but rather to say, no, these are the ones that reflect my values. This is where I'm going to hang out. It's also about figuring out who are trusted people. Like you're a trusted person to me. Someone like Jenny Edwards, I'm just going to learn. Like I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to know as much as she does. So why wouldn't I just do what she recommends? And you learn from these people that you trust and admire and are doing the kind of work that aligns with you. aesthetically, but also in terms of their values. So I think, yeah, just surrounding yourself with that, being open to learning. But the point that you made about knowing when to shut off the information is also really important. I remember the day that my frames went up, I was in a spiral. Like, what have I done? This is ridiculous. The walls are too high. Oh my gosh, I've made a massive mistake. And there were a few points during the construction where that I was like, what have we done? And I could have very easily gone down a rabbit hole of researching again, but that was not going to be useful. So I think there's a part in the process where you're flaring, you're getting information, and that's about you're wanting to get the decision right, um, and yeah, making the right decision there. But then there's a point of bringing it together where you have to focus and make a decision. And for me, that's about making the decision that you have made the right one and just backing yourself. And I would honestly have to be during the construction. I remember driving to pick up my kids from school, and I would just chant like a mantra to myself, like, I back myself to make good decisions, and I trust that I can always figure out a way forward. Like, and just reminding myself that there was unlikely to be any problem that was so insurmountable that I and my team couldn't figure out. And I just had to keep backing myself through that process.
Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. I want to dive more into your mindset generally, because I think it's going to be super helpful for others to hear that, because I feel like it is sort of the elephant in the room that doesn't really get to start discussed explicitly about your projects. But I just wanted to touch on the thing about the making the mistakes and the fact that you were going to make mistakes, because I think that what's underestimated in the process of getting educated for your project, and obviously, you talk to the work that you did to expose yourself to the right kinds of pieces of content and the right environments. And of course, jumping into Home Method and being in that community where you are surrounded by like-minded people and you've got that step-by-step structure. And I think then what I see happen is, yes, like there's always going to be challenges because you're doing a custom project and it's the first time this house has ever been built anywhere on your block of land. But the gravity of the mistakes are nowhere near what they could have been had you gone in without the information, or you don't actually find out how bad the mistake is until you're having to live with the consequences of it in your finished home. And then you realize that, just did not even see that one coming, and now it's compromising your everyday life, or it's creating dramas in the way that you live. So I think it's really, I love that you had your core foundations, to borrow a building term, so well in place. Like you'd done the work, and then yes, building up that self-trust, building up that ability, that resilience, that strategic solutions focused thinking, which has all come because you spent that time and that effort and energy in being in the right environments to do the work. So and I find it really interesting because I think a lot of people, they want this to be easy. And so, and they don't understand that when something is simple, it's easy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to have a level of complexity and challenge to it. And so when you have clarity about where you're going, what you're seeking to achieve, you've surrounded yourself with that right environment, and you back yourself in, you've built that self-trust and that resilience, then the journey that you're following for the next few years becomes a lot simpler, And so that, I think, the way that you spoke to that experience is really powerful. And I'd love to dive more into your mindset, because I know with your career, you will have a level of self-awareness about this, and obviously seeing it in other people. And it's something we do talk about in Undercover Architect Inside Home Method. It's that some people get blindsided by it. Some people are just blown away that it's playing out in the way that it is, in their renovation, that it does in other parts of their life. How did you find navigating your mindset, managing your stress, all of the stuff that can get drawn up in the fact that this is your home, you're creating this for your family, and you're making big investments. Like what did you do to navigate that emotional journey and keep your mindset in check through all of it?
I'm not sure that I did it particularly well, to be honest. There were like a lot of tears, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of angsty phone calls to friends along the way. But I guess I learned a lot from it. I think, yeah, like I said earlier, I think it's about really coming back to what's important and then just having some faith. Like there's a lot of building that you obviously you try to control a lot, you try to get informed, you try to, document things, but there's always going to be this element of I need to trust that I've done the work. I need to trust that I've built a good team. But there's always going to be some things that are out of your control. And then it comes to about, well, I trust myself that I can navigate these. I trust that I've got a good team to do that. So yeah, a little bit of self-compassion. I wish that I had probably shared more about what I was doing, either with the home method members or with other professionals. I think that sometimes, being a bit of a perfectionist, I had um, a fear of like the critique or the fear of knowing that I was doing it wrong. And so sometimes that led me to kind of just isolate and try and figure out things myself. So having some more support around me and being more willing to ask for support would have been good. But making sure that I always was clear on who is providing it. Like these people are advisors to me. I'm still the decision maker here. I'm not kind of doing what everyone else wants. But I think that probably would have been helpful along the way.
Yeah, it's a good observation. I think we can find it tricky to ask for help because we're worried we're going to look foolish or ask a silly question. So,
Hmm.
and yet, you don't know what you don't know, and you're not supposed to know everything. So it is
Hmm.
that. And yeah, I love your frankness about being that perfectionist, and we all worry about being judged. We all worry about what it might show up for us. So I think, yeah. And when your identity is attached to being somebody who is a great learner, who loves learning, who can absorb a lot of information, who does the work to be confident in certain positions and those kinds of things, then to ask questions that might challenge that sense of identity that you have about yourself can always be a little bit tricky.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So you had that, obviously, that pivot in construction. Was there anything else that, in terms of the construction process, that was unexpected, or that was, you mentioned sort of getting a little bit nervous when you saw the framing go up and that kind of stuff. Like how did you see construction, navigate? How long did the construction phase end up going for? Can you remind
We
me?
ended up breaking ground, I think, November, December of 2022, and we did handover in September 2023.
Okay, awesome. So just about 10 months,
9, 10
kind of
months, yep.
give or take a
Hmm.
bit of time out for
Yeah,
Christmas. So it's like birthing a baby, isn't it? So,
indeed.
and so the whole construction process, which is obviously a big chunk of time,
Hmm.
how did you find it? Were you obviously you were visiting site regularly, having site meetings? How did you feel as a single woman, like
Hmm.
navigating that and
Hmm.
working with your team in that environment?
Yeah, so I'm really lucky too. I was living just down the road, so it was really easy to pop past the site and yeah, and check in and things and how it was going. Um, the thing that I really liked about working with Sam from 35 South, and one of the big advantages with working through a builder through the design phase, is you get to learn about how they communicate and if they can communicate. And I'm a big like emailer, and Sam was fine with that. And so we do a lot of correspondence through email. We'd meet on site, and so he was really receptive to that kind of communication. So I think being able to test that and establish, both ways how communication would work early, that was really good. It was just a joy to be able to see it go up and to actually have a relationship with the guys that were building it. And I think that it does matter that, to wander down to site with a bag of icy poles on a hot afternoon, like it does matter. And to be able to say to these people, like, might just be a job, you're building, like, but this is my home. And I'm so grateful for the effort that you're putting in. And so to be able to celebrate them when we did with the guys on site, when we did the air tightness test, I think it was really nice to have these moments of connection with the team. Um, the advantage of doing quite a bit through email is that you have this written log rather than just the phone calls. And I know that that's something that you talk about a lot, is making sure that you have that evidence, because there are a lot of decisions that you make. And I think that in hindsight, again, maybe we needed to get clearer about documenting those in a single place, because again, I did a cost plus contract, so that meant that there was a little bit more scope for variation along the way. So just really making sure that we had those really clearly documented. But again, I think it really goes to a lot about the like the relationship that you have, and the values that you have, and that you build a like has so much influence over how this project turns out. And so I really wanted that relationship to be really positive and respectful, and really grateful that we were able to achieve that.
Yeah, and that tip about obviously creating the paper trail. Thank you for sharing that, because it is super important. You won't remember all of the decisions that you've made either. So for you to be able to go back and look through that documentation becomes very important. How did you go about selecting all of your materials and your products? Because obviously they would have had a very strong relationship with your sustainability goals. What did you do to sort of upskill yourself there and to work with your team? And was like there any point of contention in sort of the things that you wanted to use versus what the builder might have felt was, low risk to use, and those kinds of choices as well?
I think we were pretty aligned throughout. There were some things that I definitely wanted to use. Using recycled brick was important to me, and that was largely an aesthetic decision rather than a sustainability one. I just really like the look of recycled brick. The area in which I built has a encumbrance which requires a 40% masonry construction, so meant that we were going to have to have some brick in the build. But then we played around with some different lightweight cladding options. I was quite keen on using WeatherTex. I thought that again, I liked it aesthetically. Kind of worked well in terms of the kind of the construction and the values that I had as well. And we ended up using James Hardie fine texture cladding for a portion as well. And that was, I think that was might have been Lockie's suggestion to bring in that material. So again, I think if everyone's kind of clear and aligned on the vision, then it's easier for them to make recommendations that are that align. Again, I was quite keen to use polished concrete floors, both for the thermal mass, but also aesthetically and practically. I heard you talking about it recently, I think on a short video. I love that I don't have to clean it off, and it's just
They hide all manner of sins, polished
oh
concrete
my
floors, don't
gosh,
they?
it's so good. I think that again, coming into the conversation with pretty clear ideas about the things that mattered. And then in terms of other selections, like my bathroom and laundry tapware, that was really low down the list of priorities, other than having highly water efficient shower heads. Everything else was pretty low down the list. And so it was just like I walked into TradeLink and said, oh, that one, that one, that one, that one. And it was really about kind of simplicity and budget there. So again, it's knowing about where do you want to invest and what are the other things that that you can let go.
It's interesting that because you make those choices of those interior fixtures and finishes, which is where most people's attention is focused, because they're like,
Yes.
those are the things that I can handle and touch and kind of understand. I can get a tile sample and that kind of stuff. Whereas obviously understanding what brickwork might look like across, a wall that's 6 meters wide can be tricky for some people to wrap their heads around. And so there, and I think too also because you can see the price of a tap and you can see the price of a toilet. And so you can kind of have a sense that you might be kind of navigating your budget in terms of making these decisions. And they're the things that you're going to have around you. So they're going to have an aesthetic stamp. You make it sound quite casual in the way that you chose them, but seeing some of the interior photographs of your home that you've shared, you've created a stunning environment internally that works incredibly well holistically together. And I think what really comes through is just the home has this lovely light-filled, light kind of feeling to it, and ease and comfort to it. And then, the connection with outside, and there's an integrity about the materials. There's a naturalness about the materials and the colors that you've worked with. So it's really interesting again, because I think that even though they felt quite casual, like you sort of explaining them like they're quite casual choices, they were obviously so driven by your core foundations of what you wanted to achieve that it made it much easier for you to choose them quickly and choose them from those kind of avenues.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I probably hadn't thought about, that, and maybe the ease with that decision making was a little bit about the relative priority that I saw there. But also about just absorbing the aesthetic that I like, and that's years and years worth of just like knowing that I like that kind of look. And so maybe it was less of a conscious decision to say, all right, this is the exact tap style I want, but just that kind of sense of knowing, oh yeah, like that's the style that I like, that's the style that I like.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, Claire, to see how it's just all come together. I'm wondering if you can just spend a little bit of time telling us what it's like to live in as your finished home, like how it's working for you, and if it's kind of living up to your expectations. Now that you've been in it a few months, and before we jumped on, you said you actually kind of had to dig from the depths of your memory about what it was like to kind of navigate this project. I do feel like building and renovating is a lot like childbirth, where you forget at the moment that you kind of handed this baby or this finished home. Like what's it like living in the physical demonstration of what you have been able to achieve with the intention, effort, time, money that you have invested, and the way you've corralled this whole process together? Like, what's it like for you?
And sometimes it's quite surreal. I was out just watering the garden before I got on the call with you, and kind of looked back at the house, and I feel like it's crazy sometimes that a thing that exists in a like an envision or on a piece of paper, like that it now exists in 3 dimensions, and it's actually real, and that still blows my mind sometimes. But it's a really lovely house to live in. It does have a nice feel, and it does have a nice light, and they're not things that there's no kind of formula for achieving that. It's almost there's a range of factors that go into to having that. So yeah, and it just works really well for my family. I really love how we're able to gather around the kitchen bench. The connection with outdoors, the flow there is really nice. That the kids have their own space, but are never too far away. It feels right size for us. I also really love that the mural in the front hallway is one of my favorite things. So I got my friend Genevieve Burt from Jen and Tonic. She's a mural artist, and she did this wonderful mural in the entryway, which totally transforms that space. And then I let the kids choose the color for the door of their bedrooms and their blinds. And so to having these little pops of color around the house but just makes it feel really joyful and fun to be in. I really love that at the end of my hallway, I've got windows at the end of the hallway, and both have views of, trees. And so just catching those glimpses when you see things working. Um, and at a really practical level, one of the things I thought about sharing was how important it is to think about not only how you want the space to look, but what you want to be doing in the space. And one of the things that was in my mind is that I want it to be easy for the kids to go outside and go to the beach. And so that really means like, okay, so which door are they going to go through? Where are we going to wash our feet? Where are we going to hang our towels? And the one that I think about a lot is, where are we going to store the sun cream? And I've got a really great spot for storing the sun cream. And that's a daily thing, putting on your sun cream. But making that easy and built into the way your house functions. Like, I think that like getting really granular like that, and that's not about, I want this dimension of here, I want this height. It's about like actually going through in your mind, okay, well, we get up at 7 and we move here and we move here, and really just imagining yourself existing in this space means that you're going to create a space that works for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And did you like, if you take yourself right back to the design, is that something that you kind of formulated before you started the design process, or was it as the design was sort of coming out, you were like, oh, actually, we need X, Y, and Z?
No, that was so clear. The sunlight thing was so clear throughout. And like the whole, like, where am we going to put our devices? Because I want somewhere that the devices can be charged, but they're not super present. So thinking about the things that almost like the points of friction in my existing life. And it's like, no, I want to design a house that makes all of those just really easy. And I think, for parents of kids, like there's just stuff, and there's notices and school bags, and just really thinking through about, well, how is this going to work in my house? And because sometimes it can be easy to think, oh well, I'm going to build this beautiful house, but it's like for some imaginary family, it's like, I'm not that family, I'm not going to clean my floors that often, or so actually thinking about, like, what does this family need? What is realistically the amount of cleaning and maintenance I'm going to do? What is the realistic use of our space? yeah, it's been really important. But it is a lovely house to live in. It feels really comfortable, both in terms of its temperature and the kind of air quality, and in terms of the function as well.
Oh, it's music to my ears, Claire. You've just like you became a design detective before you dived in, and you literally have like interrogated and diarized, what your life needed to be to work really well. And it is that thing, we have those conversations about how do you set the house up to support the habits that you want in your future lifestyle so that, yeah, you can. I got this question just recently from somebody who was asking about, um, if there is a really lovely kitchen actually going to help them be able to cook more in a more healthy way and be able, feel like they want to cook more regularly. And I said to them, well, if you're not somebody who's passionate about, sort of cooking and eating healthy food, then, the amazing kitchen's not going to all of a sudden convert you into somebody who can cook. But you can't underestimate what happens when you design a home well. So you actually just not, your brain isn't occupied by all of the clutter of getting life done in an inconvenient way. When you actually have a house that supports you living in a streamlined, convenient, functional way, it's amazing how much then your brain is freed up to then have bandwidth for other things, which is like, oh, actually, maybe I can spend some time thinking about how we're going to nurture ourselves nutritionally. And, I can step out into the garden and think about growing veggies because they're literally just, I've got this house that draws me to outside and I want to be out there. And it's so lovely to like, have you seen that in terms of the domino effect in, your life and your work that having, we talk about your homes being the launch pad for your lifestyle. Have you seen that sort of play out for yourself compared to where you've lived in the past?
Yeah, I think that certainly thinking about the function, making it really easy to pop a load of washing in, or not having things like in the depths of the house, making it really easy to move between different zones. The kitchen works quite well. I really love how it functions, and like you said, I'm not a huge cook, and so I didn't do the multi oven butler's pantry extravaganza. But I wanted a house that, in terms of the kitchen, I guess the priority there was being able to cook and interact with my family at the same time. So making that the design, priority in the kitchen. Yeah, but certainly for the kids, what I really like is that it's an easy house for them to feel safe in, being outdoors and indoors, and for them to, for them to just be able to navigate and use themselves. So yeah, so it's working really well.
Fantastic. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to add that you think people need to hear about making their project a reality based on your experience?
Um, I guess the one I've been thinking about, well, what would I do differently if I had my time again? And probably the one thing that comes to mind is around engaging a energy efficiency assessor earlier in the process. So I think I worked really well with having the designer and the builder early on, but I would have brought in an energy efficiency assessor. By the time we got to that point, and I think you've talked about it a lot, when you at that like that end of the approvals, you just want to get started. You just want to sign a contract, and you feel a bit like a client, like I don't want to hold things up, like, and you just override. Let's get moving. Let's get into it. So I think, I mean, while we achieved an excellent result there, I'm noticing being in the house that there are probably a few windows, primarily around the windows, where I'm like, oh, I might have changed, either I might have tinted them or I might have kind of changed the seal height slightly. And just working with an energy efficiency assessor, maybe to do a little bit of back and forth. I think one of the things I've learned is that some energy efficiency assessors are more transactional than kind of less of a
Collaborative.
consultant and more of a,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so, finding an energy efficiency assessor who was willing to actually provide suggestions about, because I think my instinct is that there are some really small tweaks that we might have made, that would have just changed the thermal performance and the kind of the comfort of the home slightly. So that would be my advice: is find a good energy efficiency assessor and pull them in early.
Fantastic. Again, yeah, like obviously we've got those fantastic sessions in Home Method that we did with Sid too, where he shows
Mm.
how you can use so much of that data during the design phase to actually
Yes.
make like, help you make data driven decisions. So you're not guesstimating at, whether windows are going to need to be double glazed and, or you need a particular level of insulation. And yeah, I think it's, what star rating did you end up getting on the house? Can you remember?
7.8.
Yeah, so fantastic in terms of, at
Mm.
the time you were going through, the benchmark was 6 stars. So
Mm-hmm.
now we're obviously requiring 7 stars, but you're already, future proofing beyond that. So I can imagine your bar's very high though.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, the house is so comfortable, and I do have a split system air conditioner now, which is helpful. But I think that I'm just noticing, especially with the summer, I'm like, all right, that window is like we're getting a bit more heat gain than I like. But the advantage now that I have is being in the house and seeing where the light falls, is that I'm able to plan my landscaping a little bit differently. And so now I'm thinking around, okay, what might we plant here, and having that time and space to be in the house. I think a lot of those issues that I have around solar heat gain that I'm getting at the moment will be easily mitigated by some clever planting around the house.
Yeah, most definitely. That deciduous shade and those kinds of
Hmm.
things will be super helpful and that also will feed into your desire to have that strong connection with outside and to feel drawn to outside as well, to be able to have that kind of environment around your home as well.
Absolutely.
Claire, I can't thank you enough for how generous you've been in sharing your journey with us. It has been so lovely to watch how you have created this haven for yourself and your family. It has just, it's been so clear how intentionally you have made this happen for yourself and the way that you have upskilled yourself. I think you totally undersell your role and just what you've been able to do in terms of how you've been able to make this home a reality. And so I think it's a total testament to what you've been able to do for yourself and your family. And it's exciting for me because I know that you've applied to be in the Sustainable House Open Day as well. So you've also got an attitude that you want to share this with others. You want to help others actually see how this is possible because you have a much, your value set is based on a much bigger view of how you would love the world to be. And I love that Home Method attracts homeowners like you because, yeah, we're all sort of seeing our homes being a reflection of the kind of world that we want to create. So thank you so much for being here. Just super grateful to be able to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for all the work that you do. I think that the Home Method and the podcast has been super useful for me, not just in terms of like the practical resources and tools and advice there, but just feeling like you have other people walking this journey with you. And yeah, for the support and the having a bit of a cheerleader along the way. It's been really great. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. I've loved cheering you on. So thanks
Mm.
so much.